Hello, everybody, and welcome back to that Milan podcast. Martino Puccio, Matt Santangelo, alongside you guys. Sorry for the delay. We had some stuff going on, both busy. We'll try to get another podcast recording in this Thursday, hopefully, with a special guest that we have lined up. But for now, we thought we absolutely should get something out of the way. But again, had been busy over the weekend, so couldn't really get to it until now. Obviously, Milan finally, put us in a decent situation. Of course, the path to get there was not easy whatsoever, like it's been the entirety of the Sergio Conceição era. But Matt, how are you doing? How are you feeling after Milan gained some? They gained some points on a few teams ahead of them in the standings. So, unironically enough, it was a pretty good weekend for them, but still in despair for the most part.
Yeah, I don't really care how they get the 3 points at this point, as I've been saying for weeks, months now. And again, this game in entirely was on brand for this Milan in this Milan season. So obviously we'll get into it. But yeah, a victory 3-2 over Leche, overturn a 2-0 deficit. Uh,
Yes.
let's get started.
Yeah, I mean, let's just like get right into it. You could immediately tell with this one, Milan came out actually looking good offensively in terms of flow, energy, which was nice to see from the very start.
Mhm.
Offside goal immediately ruled out within the first minute or so of the match. Santi Jimenez could not stay on side in his run. He was a knee cap offside. Teo had a great start to this game. He was playing very well. I think Teo, out of all the main starters and stars in this one, aside from Pulisic, who we'll get into, Teo definitely looked the best he's been in a little bit of time. So I guess that was nice to see. Obviously, right there, he had that one ruled out. We'll get to the other offside one. But basically, Milan in this opportunity and instance go up when they should have. Starting off great. Their left back, who has been struggling, star left back, gets off to a great start. That gets ruled out. Their striker, who's been, up and down. I think Santi's been okay since he's arrived, hasn't gotten that much service, but also could have done better in certain instances. This is one of those. And then Milan, even with the second offside goal, you see the lack of midfield once again.
Yeah.
Warren Bondo starts in this one. Um, Hard to really place a blame on him, but this is all to Johnny Reinders on this first goal. I mean, just an absolute careless turnover of the ball. He's been absolutely poor in 2025. Nothing within this match says any different. This turnover leads to that goal by Kristovic. Sportiello out a little too far off of his line as well, you could argue.
Mhm.
Just an all around nightmare of Milan allowing a goal that should never exist for a side that is supposed to be competing for top spots in Serie A and even hopefully a trophy. So once again, you just see this sort of absolutely embarrassing display. And once again, it's under a third straight manager. I know some people like to point at different people and just be like, where's the Sergio Conceição discipline? Which is a rightful and fair question. But this is something that we've seen for the past couple of years now. This isn't anything different. That type of goal constantly happens. And Leche, who had not scored a goal at home since December, get two before we even get one on their home ground. So again, I said it in the podcast within the first 15 minutes, Leche would strike. I didn't think it would be off the back of Milan actually playing well to start. But dude, like this is once again, even in a victory for Conceição, Milan go down.
Yeah, I mean, I think on the first Kristovic goal, it was a really good goal. I mean, and if you just
Good finish,
take
yeah.
away everything else that kind of build up to the attempt, right? But it was a really good finish, and Magnon, Sportiello, I don't think any of them get a hand to it anyway or save it regardless. Kristovic has actually been the sole or one of the sole threats for Lecce. Like if they've gotten a goal this year or if they've created a goal, more times than not, it's actually come through him or Patrick Dorgu, as I mentioned, who moved to Manchester
Yeah.
United. Like they don't have a lot of goals, so like you pretty much know where the source of their goals and goal creation is coming from, at
Mhm.
least from a statistical standpoint. And sure enough, it's Kristovic who gets 2 goals in this match, and as you mentioned, puts them in the driver's seat to beat Milan at home and almost it probably would have ended Sergio Conceição's tenure. I think that would have been pretty a pretty fair
There were
assessment.
whispers of it, yeah.
Yeah, right. Um, this team lacks concentration. This team lacks the character, as we've been mentioning. It's really difficult to kind of forecast anything changing from the duration of the season, right
Yeah,
ahead, right, which is what 10 match days now,
correct,
excluding
yeah.
the Coppa Italia fixtures, right, which is at least two more. It's really difficult to watch this team. It's very deflating because a lot of the good they do, which is very limited these days,
Yep.
they seem to kind of shoot themselves in the foot. If it's not a clean, polished, really good performance, you feel like Milan are there to be had. They're exposed,
Mm,
and there's a
mhm.
good chance they, at the very least, drop points. And they're lucky enough to not drop points in this match to get 3 goals after being down 2 away. Where typically in that situation, a team like Lecce, dream result, park the bus, and you lose this game 2-1. Like that's kind of what you would envision to happen when Lecce went up 2-0.
Mhm.
I guess credit to Milan for reversing it. Pulisic with a penalty, a clear penalty, clear contact, makes amends for perhaps at least a little bit for the Torino game. And Rafa with the assist back post. We've seen him make that back post cross many times. Pulisic on the receiving end, really good finish. So this is kind of what Milan is, right? I think that, a match like this where you're down 2-0, you don't really have your best performance yet again. And now you're looking to your star guys to carry you and to create and to make things happen. And that's exactly what it was in this match. If that's what Milan needs to do to get wins down the stretch, so be it. I don't really have much else to add to that. I think
I
what
would
we've
say
unpacked in recent
even
weeks and recent performances, we saw much of the same in this one.
I mean, Lecce even had opportunities where they just completely messed up some chances too. They could have had 3 or 4 in
Yeah.
this one. And the funny thing is, like, as I say that as well, in contrast, Milan should have had 5. Um, you're basically looking at this one opportunity as well, or not opportunity, the one instance where Lecce score an own goals because João Felix completely mishits a Rafael Leao cross that was perfectly laid off. Should have been a first assist for Leao before he got his second to Pulisic. That kind of kick-started it to get it back into shape. But it was just very funny to me how they went down 2-0 prior to that. So again, Lecce is struggling for a very long time in general to score goals. All the statistics, were popping out of the woodworks about how this is the first time Lecce have scored 2 goals within 2025 in a singular match, and so on and so forth. And the amount of goals or lack thereof goals, at home this season, they lose their best player in Dorgu if it isn't Kristovic. So they're worse. They have nothing really going on for them outside of hoping that they stave off relegation and hope that they could move forward with that. And Milan allow these teams to be in these games. And it's just so embarrassing every single time. Kyle Walker, subpar. I don't love any defensive performance that was in here. Again, like I'm not even going after Teo this game. Teo was fine. He did a good job. Just very unfortunate not to get the 2 assists, obviously. So I thought he was fine. The offense was fine. That's not really the problem here. I think the big story would be a Pulisic who has looked rested, and a couple of these other players, they look refreshed. Pulisic, this was easily his best game of 2025, or arguably since the Super Copas. With this, just the link up play to win the penalty was great by him. And he obviously won his own penalty and ended up scoring it, obviously bouncing back from missing his first penalty of his career against Torino. And again, I mean, this is just Rafael Leao saving Milan. Great run by the far post, to the far post by Pulisic. Once again, Matt, that's 2 straight goals scored by Milan players who are playing on the right side that poached the far post on a Leao cross. Chukwueze did it against Lazio to tie the match. They subsequently lost. But at the same time, they're making those runs. They're recognizing them. And when Leao looks like that, it's very dangerous and terrifying for a lot of sides. He obviously was on the bench to start this one. But I think you're right. If Milan don't have Pulisic and Leao firing on all cylinders, like what do they have? And they don't have much. And this game was one of those instances in where their 2 best players end up saving their ass because the rest of the team can't put in a consistent enough performance that warrants them to feel comfortable over 90 minutes. There still hasn't been that in the Conceição era. We're talking about a victory in which they scored multiple goals, but they're down 2-0. Like how does that happen? How do you ever possibly allow that to have the ambitions that you have? And we know you mentioned the schedule too coming up. It's not easy. You look at all those games left. None of them are very easy. It's Como on the road this weekend in a few days. Then when they come back from international break, it's Napoli, it's Inter, it's Fiorentina. And Inter's obviously the Coppa Italia. They still have to play Roma, second to last match of the season. Obviously, Inter again. They have to play Atalanta. To me, and Genoa's involved in there, who are an annoying side as well. There is no like light at the end of this tunnel here for Milan. This is going to be a dogfight every single match that they play. Most of these opponents are also ahead of them in the standings. This and that's not saying too much because Milan are essentially mid-table at this point. Like you're happy to like take 3 points. You see a couple other sides drop, but you're also like, is anything fixed? Do I feel better about anything? Is the manager secure for the future? Does this management have any idea who the sporting director is going to be? Does this owner even care enough? There's just like not a lot of things to be positive about, I guess you could say. And we'll talk about the debut of one of the newer players in Bondo, but it's just the overall like saving of individual quality once again that gets you just not feeling much about this side. You would feel a lot better if it was a cohesive team win where they're not letting in the same old stupid goals that they have been. This is just, again, more of the same. You missed the majority of the match. You didn't even need to watch it. You got everything that you needed to know from the highlights. And that's kind of rare to say in this sport, but the highlights did it justice.
They did. I mean, I think the highlights told the same story that we've been telling for weeks and months now, right?
It's exhausting.
Yeah, it's very exhausting. And I think obviously, you're happy for the win and just that 90 minutes of, hey, these 90 minutes equated to 3 points. But the truth of the matter is this, you feel as though that, look, even if Milan, let's say, for example, for the conversation's sake, right, they were to go on a little bit of a run. Every match is basically a final at this point, if we're speaking in the conversation context of whether we think they can get Champions League still, right? Which, by all accounts, it looks like it's going to be 4 points, right? On the weekend, Juventus gets smashed by Atalanta. A couple other teams in that sort of conversation.
Fiorentina and Lazio drop points.
They drop points, and now you're kind of thinking like, this Milan, knowing this Milan, and knowing how the season has played out, in a strange way, you almost feel as though this Milan is going to somehow go on like a little mini run. And at the end of the season, they're going to miss out on top 4 by 3 to 4 points. And you're going to look and circle games in the calendar previously and say, this game, this game, this game, this game, and think,
off the
man,
back of
it really wasn't that difficult of a job for them to get top 4 this year. But they really had a lot of self-inflicted wounds and issues that, despite all the things that they did endure, they really could have gotten a top 4 spot because it's been very scrappy. Aside from Inter and Napoli, Atalanta have been exposed many times. So have Juventus. And Juventus, everyone's like, oh, they're only 6 points out of the title conversation. And all of a sudden they get smashed. Like, Milan really did not do themselves a lot of favors. And even a match like this, you saw the assist that Rafa had to Pulisic for the goal. He was pumped up. Pulisic was pumped up. Is this something that gets this team galvanized? And now they say, hey, we got 10 finals left. Regardless of what the teams ahead of us are doing, we control the 90 minutes. We control whether or not we get the 3 points in front of us. Maybe that's sort of the conversation. Maybe that's sort of the energy that this team needs. Maybe they needed something like this. I know you can look at a match and say, it should have been the Inter game in the Coppa in the Super Cup that launched Milan the second half of the season. It should have been this game. It should have been that game. Maybe it's something like this. I don't think top 4 is going to happen. Let me be very clear with that, Martino. But man, like being down 2-0 away to a team that's in 16th place and really doesn't have much to kind of kill you with, and they go up 2-0 and you still look bad, and then you come back. So I guess we'll wait and see how Milan kind of build off this, if they do at all against Como, who are no pushovers. They're a team that has an exciting project. They're ambitious. They got, a promising young coach. They got players up front in attacking areas that can cause Milan harm. And this team is obviously susceptible to you having their defensive mistakes. So it doesn't get easier, to your point.
No, it doesn't. And I guess the difficult part would be, I mean, Como coming to San Siro is helpful in a way. Milan have the highest attendance record within Serie A. So despite all of this is how great the fans are. I would also like to mention as well, you talk about game to game. Here's where it is really difficult, and I think it's immediately after the international break. Now, the international break is much needed for this club. I think the players that are involved in this team right now absolutely need the rest. I think it's already showing benefits. They get a full week's rest here in between the Leche game to Como, so we'll see how they handle that. I think the telling thing is what happens after the break, and the break after the break is so difficult. Just the three matches, right? So March 30th, Napoli Milan at the Maradona. For me personally, I'm not saying punt this tie. I'm saying if you could rest some guys, do it because it's a quick turnaround on April 2nd to face Inter. Um, Napoli's gunning for the Scudetto. I think they're a better side. Obviously, not that much more talented, even if you could argue that. But like on the way Napoli are at home, I have a really really hard time seeing Milan get any sort of result there. And then again, the Inter tie in Coppa Italia, the one potential saving grace for this club this season were to be winning that competition and not losing to Inter at any point. But then you go again, a quickish turnaround, 4 days to Fiorentina, and then Milan start to play like once a week for a little bit until that second leg against Inter. There is that sort of window, and how does Conceição juggle this? How does he handle putting these players in these fixtures? How much time is too much time against Napoli for the turnaround against Inter? How much energy you putting in against Inter in that Coppa Italia? How much energy, in contrast, is Inter putting into it? Because Inter have multiple competitions. You hear Simone Inzaghi say, "Oh, we want the treble and this and that." It's a good mentality from them. I get it, but realistically, with their depth, what they're gunning for, how like Coppa Italia is a clearly third distant on that because they have a realistic shot of winning the Champions League. Outside chance, not like, oh my god, like they're one of the favorites. I think they're a good favorite. I think they have a shot, but also again with the title, the Scudetto is everything. So you kind of sit there and wonder what Inter's going to do. And then in comparison, Milan and Fiorentina, I think that's sort of a dogfight. Two teams that have been sort of up and down. Fiorentina got off to a great start this year. They're the ones who have also been fading in 2025. Palladino sort of on the hot seat. So you kind of like look and point to like, where is it that Milan sort of get that consistency and health? Because once a week would have been great. But now that since they're deeper in Coppa Italia, they're going to have to try and juggle that on top of the matches and opponents being very difficult. And again, that Fiorentina game is at home, as well as they're the home side for the first leg against Inter. So, yeah, it's interesting in that regard. I think you just have to look at it week by week. And I do wonder, and I am curious for your point of view on this, that Conceição sort of having time to work once a week with this group, is there a part of you that says if they work well enough and they win a good amount of these games and they end up winning Coppa Italia somehow, again, this is just all sort of best case scenario for Milan. I'm not even saying they get top 4 or top 5 if that were to happen for Serie A. Does that any like spot, like is there any spot that you see them actually keeping him?
No.
Because it looks like he's done at this point, and something
No.
I was sadly wrong about. I mean, I don't think he's handling the difficult moments despite how difficult the job was in the moment he took over. I don't see that he handles it well enough to be here in the long run, right? Like Pioli handled difficult moments well, I thought, at times. But Conceição seems to be sort of imploding.
You look to your coach and you look to certain individuals, personnel in moments like this, and you need your leaders as well. We talked about last week when Mike Magnon getting suspended, right? You look to the reference points within this team when things get tough to kind of be a calming presence, be someone that can help get things back on track, galvanize the group. Whether what happened previously is detrimental and it's a shot to your Scudetto hope, not Scudetto, but top four hopes or whatever the case may be. You need someone that you could look for in moments like this and say that, all right, this guy has it under control. And in recent weeks, Bologna game, Torino game, some of the comments, they're just the feeling surrounding Conceição after those results was not really favorable. And I think that, where there's smoke, there's fire. And I'm not saying I believe everything the media has been putting out. They're very dishonest, obviously, a lot of times wrong. But I think it's pretty obvious that, when Milan committed to Sergio Conceição, they gave him a 6-month contract with the option to make it, for the following next season. I think a lot of things had to go right. I think he had to be saying a lot of the right things, even if he maybe didn't get top four, but maybe he got this group to play better football in the second half of the season. And they said, okay, you know what? It was a difficult situation. Hey, maybe we got the Super Cup and we got Europa League and we got Copa. You know what? We'll keep Sergio. We like where we're headed with him. We like how he was able to, in a very short amount of time, instill his ideas, and we like where he's headed. I didn't see that. And to your point, we both were on board with him coming in, but I think we expected a little bit more, during this delicate part of the season. And I don't think we've gotten it. And I'm not saying that is the sole reason for this decline, but I think ultimately, I don't think a lot of the things that he's done have made his status any easier or the decision any easier for management to confirm him for next year. Not to mention when you bring in potentially a new director and there's a lot of conversation going around that, they're always going to have their differences on who they want. We see this in NFL, right? Where you bring the GM wants their coach. The coach wants their coordinators. The coordinators want their guys. Like, that's kind of what I see happening. And I think this season, regardless if they get Europa League through Coppa Italia or where they finish in the standings, I think that now is the time for a reset, like a proper reset. If that means 4 or 5 guys sold in the summer and you bring in new players and 1 star is gone to kind of fund some of these things because Milan are taking a massive hit with the revenues for not getting Champions League if they don't, so be it. I think that, in my opinion, should have happened last year. When you got the new coach, when we were done with Stefano Pioli, you had the 2 years of losing Kjaer, Ibra, Giroud, some of these guys. Pioli's gone, 5 years at the club. That's when it would have been the proper time to say, all right, new cycle. Let's get the right coach. Let's spend amount of money while we're in the Champions League. We can afford to do so. They cut corners, and as we've been speaking on for weeks and months now, right, and the entire season, you're seeing the result of all that corner cutting and where it's led Milan, which is still, I think, 8th place now? I think they jumped up a little bit.
Or did they maybe?
Maybe not. I don't even know.
It's well because I think you're 100% right, and we will touch on it on the next podcast. And overarching theme is just like this miscommunication. You're also hearing more things from like someone like Nicolo Schiro saying, "Oh well, Moncada. There's 2 scenarios in this. He's either out or he's getting demoted back to head scout. Tade would come in, or Paratici, or another figure in for the sporting director role, and would also push Zlatan back into a different direction, and Furlani kind of aligning more of a structure-based club." And to me, it kind of seems like, listen, I think everyone should lose their job for what happened. Be straight up. But the owner can't do that because he doesn't know anyone else. He doesn't have any friends in this.
He doesn't have a pulse on like who is the right
guy. He doesn't know.
Guy.
It's not like he's gonna go out and be like, "Oh yeah, Tony D'Amico, know the guy, gonna hire him, put him in." Like there's new owners within the NFL. Someone like Josh Harris with the Commanders, he knows plenty of people in and around the sports itself. He knows who to appoint. Jay doesn't know anybody in Italian football. Guy doesn't even come.
He's hiring someone that he hopes knows.
That's why there's 2 people within this front office that are Redbird employees. They're not actually Milan employees or employees that have footballing backgrounds. Again, like the trend that we had seen, like even with Paulo Fonseca, or even going back to what we said this time last year. Oh, well, they don't want to know if they can confirm Pioli for next season because if Pioli wins Europa League, we have to keep Pioli. But if not, then we're going to have to look at a different manager. But we really like Thiago Motta. He would be number one on our list. But we can't know for sure that we want to go for Thiago Motta because we don't know if we're keeping Pioli left. Oh, and then by the way, we're interested in going for Julian Lopetegui. We like Lopetegui a lot, but you guys don't like him, so we're probably not going to go for him. We're going to take all the time in the world to try and figure out if it's Marcelo Gallardo, if it's Sergio Conceição, if it's Paulo Fonseca, all these like long-standing options that get them late into June when they make their managerial decision behind the eight ball when it comes to bringing in players, proper personnel, and guys that they want to bring in. There was no concrete plan there. And a lot of that reflects because you don't have proper directors that have done this job before, that know how to prep, that know how to make decisions, or at least very difficult ones that you have to say to yourself, yes, Stefano Pioli, we love you. We adore everything that you have done for this club, and we respect you forever. But at the same time, we have to move in a different direction, and we have to make this decision now. We can't be holding you on by like a thread being like, oh, yeah, well, in this magical scenario in which you pull off a miracle, you could stay. That's not good planning. That's never been good planning. And that's not what successful clubs do. Because once again, it all started with that sacking of Maldini and it's sort of that domino effect. And now they're saying, if Tade or the sporting director comes in prior to May, which I hope that's when it gets done, I think that would be huge because this sort of like Igliatare, for example, right? And I think you would agree with this, Paratici, the same as well. That's not the same as Di Ottavio. I think we can all agree with that. That even depending upon how much we value them as directors, are they great at their jobs? Are they knowing how to put together a Scudetto winning team? We could at least say this isn't a yes man like Di Ottavio, or someone that like clearly has no experience, or someone that is going to be left out of the dark. If Tade's in there, if Paratici's in there, they're going to be at the forefront of this. They're going to have a voice in the room. They're going to be telling people, okay, well, in our experience, when we won more trophies, even though Lazio didn't win a Scudetto, Tade was very successful at a club like Lazio. Regardless of the appointment of Simone Inzaghi and all that other stuff and retooling the team, they did a very good job. Same goes for Paratici. He has experience. He won multiple Scudetti. Say what you want about where Spurs are in their situation. He actually did a better job than most would actually like to admit, including myself. Milan, they're not going to be like this, like what, like I'm assuming what you would love, like Conte, like I know you said in the past, and someone like Tony D'Amico, who has great history track record and kind of aligns with that Redbird vision where, okay, we could spend a little less money, and if we need to make sacrifices and big sales, we'll do so. Milan can somewhat stabilize the situation. I'm not saying I love it. I'm not saying I love the directors. What I'm saying is they could somewhat salvage something to turn around and get top four next year or get a Champions League spot because the individual quality is there. Sales of potential players outgoing are still there. I think that they have to nail this. They have to get the structure. And my question to you after that long-standing ramble by myself is, does the idea not excite you, but make you feel a little bit better that if it's like this? And hear me out. Moncada gets demoted back to head scout, where he's just talent ID. Zlatan takes a back seat from doing whatever the hell he's doing and has a more prioritized role where he's a little bit more PR and talking and not making as many decisions as possible in different areas of the club. Forlani's the CEO, and then you have a Tade or a Paratici that basically takes over the sporting side and says, guys, please let me do this. I know how to build a team. I could fix this midfield. I could get us some stable defenders at the back, and I could get us players that could help build off of the foundation of a Teo or a Leao or, Reinders and so on and so forth. Do you feel a little bit more comfortable if that's the direction this club would take in a window in which it's before the end of the season, like they have Tade or somebody in by like the middle of May?
I don't. I just truly don't because I think that I don't trust this management to let a director work in peace, in freedom, and tranquility, and work within their role, and not have people in their ear doing this, doing that. Because again, we've said this many times, right? For all the faults that maybe Maldini, Mazzara made as directors when it came to certain misses on the market or certain renewals of certain players that did or did not happen, yeah, at least you kind of felt that there was some sort of like understanding of who was making the decisions with certain things. And obviously it's a collaborative effort, right? It's not just, hey Martino, you're doing this and you don't need my opinion to do anything. You're just going to go about with the show and not no, that's not how it works. But if I'm hiring an individual for a job and I'm hiring him on the merit and everything
Yeah.
he's accomplished for what he's done in the sport and in this league with Lazio, as you mentioned, I need to give him the freedom to do his job. Is it going to be a conversation of, oh yeah, Tar, you're the director, and then he wants, hey, we need a little bit more money. Whoa, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. We're
Hmm.
actually going to give you this because that's what Maldini, and maybe in something that didn't work in his favor was maybe he wasn't a strong enough personality in certain moments because there was a lot of negotiations where, around Milan when they were consistently in the Champions League at that point, obviously even after winning the Scudetto, where he probably could have put his foot down a little bit more and with a little bit more authority said, I just got the Scudetto as a director. We just made top four multiple years. I need this extra 2 to 3 million to get this deal over the line. And many times in January, Martino, how many times did we see where they were after a player that liked them, but the distance was 1 or 2 million, and then they pulled back because they didn't get the backing?
Who's the striker at Atletico Madrid right now? Julian Alvarez
Julian
was
Alvarez. Yeah.
literally that
Yeah.
player.
I was thinking, I'm
Was
drawing a
yeah,
blank. I
you're
was thinking
good.
like
You're
Griezmann. I'm like, Diego
good.
Costa. Yeah.
No, but that's
Julian Alvarez.
literally you remember this because he was
Right.
the top striker in the South American process, and it was sort of like Milan like him. He could play as a winger. He could play as a striker.
Yep.
He's hungry. He presses very well. He fits into that age area. And Milan and Elliott or Redbird or whoever was with them at the time said, "Hey, 2 to 3 million. I don't know. I don't know,
Right.
man. We can't come up
And
with those funds for
and
you."
and 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 what I'm basically saying now is because
Yep.
they don't have most likely Champions League next year. They're going to have to take some sacrifices on the market. That could
Yeah.
be in the form of selling a top player like they did with Tonali to fund more moves, because if you're going to get a new director and a new coach, it might be a conversation of, hey, we're selling Rafa, or we're selling Magnon, or we're selling Teo, which truthfully, Teo probably doesn't garner enough on the financial side because he'll have 1 year left on his contract and he's basically been out of form. So that's kind of where the tricky thing comes here. I think if you're bringing in Tade, I think that there's probably going to be, in my view, an understanding, or there should be an understanding amongst the fan base that between not getting Champions League revenues and the money that comes along with that, and all the guarantees that you now can go into the market with, now you're almost asking Tade to build a team and cut some more corners
I
and
think
have to be strategic with the moves versus getting the top players. And maybe that was somewhat of the thought process going into this January window, where like they were saying, well, if we don't get Champions League next year, we're not getting the Champions League revenues that are required to make such drastic changes. I'm talking striker, which they went out and spent a ton on a striker. I'm talking certain areas of the squad. So what I'm basically saying is, I think that if Milan don't get Champions League and they hire someone like Tare, I think fans need to be very conscious, aware, and understanding of the fact that it could be another one of those markets where they don't make drastic changes. And if they do make a drastic change, it comes at the price and expense of selling a top player. Because I think that this ownership and management, they, to me, don't seem all in. As far as the way they act, they could spend sometimes in January, but the truth of the matter is this: even without Champions League revenue, Martina, would you agree that they probably still could spend a little bit of money?
Okay,
Probably.
well, so this is like my whole thing, and I've talked to Ollie Fisher about this, and I try and make this point, but like a lot of people just don't want to. I'm not saying nobody wants to view it the way I want to view it. I think some people just doubt it's able to happen, even though I disagree greatly. So here's my whole thing. You get money for Kalulu, you get money for CDK, you get money for Daniel Maldini, you're getting money for Luca Romero, okay? Yassine Adli is another player that you're going to be making money on via a sale. Tommaso Pobega is another player. Okay, so these are all like
Possibly Salamakers.
You're talking about it, yes, and I'm not even getting to him yet and a couple other players. Salamaker's value has skyrocketed. Milan could legitimately get at least 20 million from Roma for him. We're talking about a player that they barely spent money on. So right there, pure profit, you're making more money. You could potentially get Divock Origi off the books in terms of his wages. True. Okay. Now I'm thinking and looking at it, and Morata's money would also be coming in as well because he's going to Galatasaray. So we're not even mentioning Benacer yet. Okay, that's another 10 to 15 million. You see how this is all accumulating to more dollars adding up. Okay, not even at the Lorenzo Colombo points yet, which that could also be pure profit coming in. Noah Okafor, I think his future at the club is done. He's out. Obviously, Samuel Chukwueze as well is another player that you can get some money for. Ruben Loftus-Cheek, another player who I don't think has a future here. Yunus Musa, I find his future very murky. These are all players that could leave. I'm not saying this is a mass exodus, but Tomori is another one. So you see where I'm coming from with this is that all those players added up actually produce quite a bit of money. And the difficult decision I would say is I think you could actually keep Theo Hernandez in this instance. And if an offer comes in from Mike Maignan, where I'm talking about at least 30 million per se, right? Rough estimate of at least 30 million on the floor. I think they could get 40 million and maybe a little bit more. Kind of depends. I'm making that deal 10 times out of 10 because if I could do that on top of all those other sales with the CDK, the Salamakers, like for example, if Milan get at least 20 million for Alexis Salamakers on top of the CDK sale, you're talking around 40 something million just for those two players.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're getting around another 14 million for Kalulu. Then you're at what? In the 50s. That's not even including Chukwueze's sale yet. That's not including Benacer. That's not including Tomori. That's not including Loftus-Cheek. You're talking about 4 other players that could get you to that 100 million euro mark. Okay? And then again, Milan have no FFP restrictions to worry about that they have to sync up with. And then you were to add to a sale of Mike Maignan on top of that, suddenly Milan have a budget to play with. And they have flexibility. And I think that's an actual possibility.
But you know, when you're saying all those things, you have to bear in mind and understand the fact that you're mentioning that possibly half a dozen, 8 players could walk this summer.
Half of those don't even play on the team this year.
But that means how many guys you have to. That just goes to show you how many
guys, goalkeeper.
How many guys you'll have to bring in though. Like how many decisions you'll have to make.
It's also not that many because if you know how to shop with a real director now, you're not spending exorbitant amount. Like to me, Benacer did what this year? He's doing nothing. He's added nothing. Tomori, he's basically not even in the squad. Same goes for Salamakers. I would like to keep personally. And again, I forget to mention Noah Okafor. These are just like all people who are just not contributing to the team. So when we're saying like replace these guys, who are we actually replacing? We're not really replacing anyone because they've done nothing. And that's not even to mention
replacing in the sense of their role within the team. So you just mentioned, okay, Musa, right? Okay, well, by all accounts, he's been our 3rd midfielder in this team. You're going to have to go and spend for a 3rd midfielder. And you're going to have to go and dress all these areas. So what I'm basically trying to tell you is if people think that we're going to come in here in the summer with all those players exiting, and even if we did bring in a decent coup of money, the Samuel Ricci's for 35, 40 million, not happening in my opinion. Not happening because now you need to go and get 2 central defenders. You need to go and get us 2 central defenders. You need to go and get at least 2 more wingers or another winger. So that's basically what I'm saying is it's going to be more. You're going to need a director that's been proven to work within restrictions and confined to a smaller budget, which Tade did a lot of times at Lazio. But I'm just really concerned with him having the space in this framework, the way this team is constructed. And then for that reason, as you also been pointing out, people need to lose their jobs. I'm sick of going into another year and it's, Forlani will take a back seat. Is he going to take a back seat and roll and make a lot of decisions?
He's clearly the one at the forefront of this.
And be someone that is less hands-on, but is still showing his face at conferences, still talking about the market? Or is he going to overstep and still be someone that says, yeah, we hired you, but I work for Jerry and Jerry owns this team. So step in line. That's what
I'm not like saying that, but like also like Tade is the guy, if he's making these sporting decisions, that is going to say, okay, yeah, we're going with these sales. And I think that, and there is a tweet just sent out by Antonio Vitiello here. Um, so Milan and Inter have just sent in a proposal for the acquisition of San Siro and the surrounding areas. Together, the feasibility study for the construction of cutting-edge stadium, part of an urban regeneration project. The name of the process also, like, so again, this is over 50 million spent to the San Donato region, which is now potentially going to be like a different training center and area. I'm not sure if you read any of this, but they can't build a stadium there, that they're probably just going to use the property for the Futuro and Primavera and just make it like an ultimate, like, sort of like, training grounds. But again, to continue this statement by Vitiello, because I think this is like pretty important here, because it just shows Milan are going to be buying, or Milan and Inter want to buy San Siro, so that obviously rules out any project. Shocker. Anyways, continuing. A proposal developed by the best professionals and experts in the sector, the result of the strategic vision of the two clubs' owners, which lays the foundations for implementation of a work that will represent an international benchmark and bring significant benefits to the city of Milan and the Milanese. In the coming months, the two clubs will meet with the municipal administration to share and explore details and distinctive elements of the proposal, with the aim of completing the acquisition procedure by July 2025. So both of these clubs want to complete this process and own San Siro by this summer. The final concept and executive project will be presented at a later stage and therefore not the subject of documentation presented today. So essentially, Milan and Inter are saying that they will be proposing an idea, not an idea, they will want to move forward on buying San Siro and making that their permanent home and the surrounding areas of it. So again, that kills the entire project of getting their own stadium, building this state of the art sort of area, and they're gonna stick with San Siro and build it or buy it, and then probably do their own renovations for the club there. Again, quick thoughts on that. I mean, this is like, I mean, to me, it's just so like despicable on how that country works, first and foremost. And secondly, it's like, can you imagine wasting 55 million in the toilet to try and buy that property just for them to say no? That's actual funds that the clubs had to spend. The club had to spend. Sorry.
It truthfully doesn't mean. It sounds like I'm whining and I'm very negative, but
No.
it doesn't mean anything to me. They're proposing this. They have an idea to do this. Them and Inter want to do that. Until I don't even care if you break ground. Until I see that it's official and they own San Siro. Then talk to me. Because I've seen 3 in my years of following this club. I think I've seen 3 instances where new stadium. Oh, they already bought the location. They have this, they have that. And we still have the same stadium and it's 2025. So Udinese got a season or a stadium before us. What's going to come sooner? GTA 6 or Milan and Inter owning San Siro?
GTA 6.
GTA 6, right?
Which is like, it's not a good thing, guys.
I hate to be negative, but like that's really where I'm at.
It's not negative. You're going off of what you've seen the past however many years.
Like
that's not negative.
It's no knock on Vitiello. Like he's just reporting the news when
no, of course, yeah.
And same thing with you. But it's like I just assume it's not going to work, and we're going to consistently be playing in San Siro. And I love San Siro, but we need our own stadium. We need a solution one way or the other.
Oh well, this would. I'm not going to be that time, but this would be their own stadium. But again, if you guys have been to San Siro, like, got a lot to work on. There's a lot to work on within it to make it more modern. Again, the allure of it, I mean, that's really great in a way, but there's certain sections in which fans cannot sit at because it's not stable. Because it would crash, it would break, people would die. That's a problem. Have you gone in the bathrooms there? Have you seen the bathroom?
It's a hole in the ground. Like in the women's bathroom, I went with my mother years ago in 2016. She was like beside herself. She was like, it was a hole in the floor. The bathrooms are terrible. The whole framework.
They're
It's
trying to make
great.
Mama Santangelo go to the
Just
bathroom in a hole in the ground.
remove the rose-colored glasses and all the allure and aura
Mm,
surrounding San Siro and all the photos and images and the history with the stadium. Milan need a solution in this area of the club.
yes.
They need a solution. Period. I'm cool with it if they say, "Hey, we're buying San Siro and we're going to pour money into it and we're going to renovate it and revamp everything and we're going to make this the home of Milan and Inter, and it's going to bring in additional revenue opportunities, commercial opportunities, all those sorts of
Yeah.
things." I'm cool with it.
Yeah.
I need something concrete. Like until I get that, we've been here how many times in this conversation? It doesn't really mean
I
much.
don't know. It's been repeated
That's
so many times over the
that's
years.
that's all I got. So
Yeah. Um, again, it's just to me, it's just fascinating. All right, guys, that's gonna wrap up the podcast. In case you couldn't tell, I could not move at all. My neck is killing me. We did a lot more than we thought we could. We had an open dialogue with this. Please stay tuned for hopefully later this week for a very special guest for the podcast that I'm sure many of you will be excited for once you see the announcement for it, once we lock in a time and date. And again, please subscribe to us at That Milan Podcast on Apple and Spotify. Subscribe to our other channel at That Milan Podcast, where all the short form videos get uploaded onto. The road for 500 subs is on its way. We have 116 subs already, so it would be greatly appreciated if we could reach that benchmark. Again, you could follow Matt everywhere at Matt_Santangelo at AC Milan Bros. As well, that he does with his brother. You can follow us at That Milan Pod on Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram. Again, follow me at Martino Puccio and at Martino_Puccio. Any other final thoughts before we go here?
no, just on more again, like I normally say, just thanks to the community for supporting, liking. I know it's not easy to get excited,
Views have
enthusiastic
dropped. Views have
over,
dropped.
over YouTube content, over just in general Milan content, Milan related stuff. Truthfully, I was away this past weekend and it felt great to just sort of be kind of distant and disconnected from all that was happening in the world of football. Like I didn't even know any of the results. I looked, I was like, oh shoot, Milan are losing. And then I saw that they won and I was like, okay, they won. So that's kind of where my head is at right now. So I just want to say thank you guys for staying engaged, staying supportive, liking, subscribing, helping the new channel grow as Martino has been posting in the past couple weeks, and obviously helping elevate our other social platforms. So that's a big thanks to you guys, and hopefully some more consistent results and a steady string of wins to come these next few weeks or months. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. We appreciate all of you. And other than that, take care.